there, my name is Doreen, and this is my experience through Colorado State's Master of Education in Education and Human Resource Studies Adult Education and Training degree. That's a bit of a mouthful, so from here on out, I'm going to call it the AET program. I started in the fall of 2015 when my son Ket was just 4 months old. His first year, he and I read many adult learning textbooks together. At the time, I was the manager of staff development and certification for a social benefit nonprofit, Mind Research Institute. I managed a small team, and together we designed internal training and coaching for the team at Mind. I was a practicing adult educator, but I didn't have any formal training in my field. In fact, I didn't even realize how much of a field it was. I began my journey taking 2 core foundational courses, EDAE 520, Adult Education, and EDAE 620, Process and Methods. These 2 courses were eye-opening for me. I learned about how vast the adult education field is, as well as a lot of great theory and practice that both solidified what I'd been learning in the field and also pushed on some of my preconceived notions. The 2 people on my team that I worked with that fall can attest that I got very excited about all the new theory and teaching methods, and I would shoot off late-night emails to them with my findings since we were all on a quest to become the best adult educators we could be. That fall, I learned about the massive need for adult education around the world, reading about all the people that are unable to read or get the jobs they want. I also got labels for many of the experiments I'd been trying with people that I was training at work. For instance, I learned about self-directed learning and the pieces that I was missing in my practice. I'd been designing coursework that learners could do on their own, but I hadn't really considered their motivation or how I'd assess it. One of the course readings was Dewey's Experience and Education. The part I enjoyed most was reading Dewey's thought process about why an either-or way of thinking is just not sound. In my life, I've seen the pendulum in education swing back and forth, going from one extreme to another, when the best methods are probably toward the middle. And I can apply his reasoning to so many decisions and ideas. Rather than taking something I don't like and trying to do the opposite, it's so important to really reflect on what the needs are and what may work best, no matter how the ideas are labeled. In reading it, I reflected on my own practices and realized that I tend to jump on new ideas and I'm quick to throw away old ones, so this was a great reminder to be strategic in my thinking. I also learned a great deal about the history of adult education. Reading Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed and learning about the banking system helped solidify my ideas about how I wanted to engage learners in the education process. The history of Hull House, the Land Grant Act, the Chihuahua movement were some of my favorites. Adult education felt like such a new field for me since I hadn't realized its depth or history, so these classes were fascinating. Next, I took EDRM 600, Introduction to Research Methods. This was a great course. I'd read research articles before taking it, and I'd seen some trends in the way they were written, but this class was pivotal in my understanding of how to do, find, and read research. I learned all about the CSU library of scholarly articles and got good at finding recent, pertinent research. I'm very much going to miss my CSU library login when I'm no longer a student. In this class, I learned by doing. In my quest to be a better manager of remote employees, I conducted my own research examining the correlation between motivation and autonomy with remote employees. Since I had 2 variables for which I wanted to see if there was a correlation, I used a quantitative approach. A correlation design allowed me to measure the degree of association between my 2 variables. In this course, I learned a lot about how to sample a population, I learned about response rates, the math behind a correlation study, and how to validate my research findings. As a manager of remote adult educators, the research solidified my goal to be a leader that gives a team room to be productive without micromanaging, and also nudging them to continue to improve themselves. This course also made me dramatically better at learning, since I now read research with much more enjoyment and a more discerning eye. That summer, I took EDAE 590, Teaching and Learning at a Distance. This class was unique in its format. I took a hybrid class where I joined twice a week at a designated time via QB. A QB is a little robot that holds an iPad, and it allowed me to control the device so I could turn and look at the person who was talking or look around the room. There were several people in the room live and several of us joining remotely, and it was a fascinating experience. In my work, I had found that it was better to keep meetings either all in person or all digital, because when I'd experimented with mixing some people in the room and some online, the folks in the room talked too much and the folks online had private discussions the rest of the room couldn't read. However, this was a successful example of merging an in-person and digital worlds. I had control over where I looked in the room just like I would in a live setting, and my face was displayed close to life size on the iPad, so the people in the room and remotely were all able to get to know me too. In that class, we explored a lot of different methods of adult education, from much larger robots to collaborative spaces online. This course was also a good example of giving learners freedom. There was so much we could tackle, so we were each able to guide our own learning through several mini-learning activities and reports. This course was also one where I learned about universal design, the design of learning environments that can be accessed and understood by everyone, no matter their age, ability, etc. Before learning about it, I'd been very careful when I learned of a special need in one of my learners to design for their need, but it makes so much more sense to use universal design principles in all aspects of my instructional design. Not only does that save me time in the future, it also frees my learners to not have to self-identify if they have a diverse need that they don't want to share. I'm very grateful to have learned about this, and I'm a better teacher for it. Next came ADAE 639, Instructional Design. This was one of my favorite classes. Even though I've been designing instruction since college, when I was earning my bachelor's and credential to become an elementary school teacher, I had not comprehended the methodical way to go about designing instruction. There was method after method, almost all centering around getting to know the needs of the learner, designing instruction that would get the learner to do the thinking and the work, building assessments along the way to guide the instruction, and summative assessments to help with their future iterations. This class gave me structure and process and helped me listen much more deeply to the needs of my learners before launching into course creation. This was also the first time I'd thought about having subject matter experts that were not the instructional designers and the important relationship between the two. It also solidified the need for strong instructional support materials. It's one thing to design a workshop for myself that I can deliver easily, and it's a whole other skill set to design content other people can pick up and deliver. It was through this course that I got good at designing facilitators' guides for my coworkers, and they say that's been a big help. EDAE 624, Adult Teaching and Learning, came next. At this point, I had the basics of the theories, so I was able to experiment with using those theories in my coursework and really enjoyed looking at counter opinions to what I'd already learned as truth in adult education. I also read the book The Courage to Teach, which helped me reflect on teaching at a time when I was changing roles at work. I had just been promoted to the Senior Manager of Education Success at Mind, so I was no longer in charge of internal training and had moved to managing adult educators. One of my many takeaways from that book was that fears, challenges, difficult people, hard content, and so much more were all going to cross my path, and that I would struggle, but if I used a critical and reflective eye and let that struggle pass, I would be successful. Staying centered and balanced is a very needed mindset in my career, and this whole graduate program has reinforced those skills. At the same time, I took EDUC 651, Multicultural and Special Populations. This course was intense, both emotionally and mentally. It was designed to make sure I'm an excellent adult educator to all people, and to do so, it involved a lot of very sad reading and discussions. We examined privilege, bias, discrimination, and the struggles of many groups of people. The discussions were often emotionally charged. I had never really grappled with the idea of privilege before this course. I've been a firm believer in trying hard in order to achieve your dreams, but this class opened my eyes to how the same level of effort can get people in different positions to very different places in their lives. As an adult educator, this was an important class since it made me even more aware. It was also a good class for me as a mother. I'm raising a middle-class white male, and I want to do a good job. My final paper for this class, I designed a protocol for raising children to be advocates for others. This past summer, I took EDAE 601, Philosophy and Organization of Workforce Education. This was a class I had incorrect preconceived notions about. I thought I was walking into a course that would help me train employees in the workforce better. But in reality, the door was being opened to me to a whole new field in adult education I had not considered previously. There's a huge workforce education field, and I got the opportunity to visit a workforce development center down in Sacramento. The one I visited was a nonprofit servicing thousands of people a year, providing training in health, parenting, technology, job skills, interview skills, and providing important services like counseling and childcare. Everywhere I turn, I realize the critical role of adult education. It also stood out to me in this class how unbelievably rewarding it is. It was such a pleasure to get to see the pride in the eyes of the adult educators at the Workforce Development Center as I shook their hands and thanked them for their service. It's very hard to pick a favorite class in this program since each course was an important puzzle piece in my learning and development. But AE 692, Experiential Learning and the Adult Learner, was something special. It was the only class I attended in person. I took a week off work and flew to Colorado, where I got to take a tour of campus and finally meet my academic advisor and several peers. We then drove up to CSU's mountain campus in Pingree Park, where we truly lived experiential learning. Before this course, I thought I had my mind wrapped around experiential learning and its value. However, like so much in this program, really focusing on it was eye-opening. I learned the 5 major components of designing an experiential learning activity. 1. Choosing the experience, which includes pieces like current schema, how I'd need to scaffold, a needs assessment, and environmental factors. 2. Framing the experience, which is something I'd seen in trainings designed for me for years, but that I'd never really bought into until this course. While not all outcomes need to be overt, there is power in framing an experience for the learner to get the most out of it. 3. Facilitating the experience and the role of choice in that process. 4. Processing the experience, which is another aspect I have historically skimmed over when delivering professional development. Before this course, I saw it as something I should go quickly through, if at all, in order to respect the adult learner's ego and freedom to choose what he or she got out of any given task. However, through experience, I learned the power in setting up an experience so the learner could walk away with the so what and the now what instead of just the what. And 5, the final piece was transferring learning from experience into the future. This was a course where I developed the strongest relationships with my peers and was able to really throw myself into the learning in a new way, away from my email inbox and the demands of the rest of my life. And that brings me here to EDAE 698, my final research course in this awesome program. My son is now 2 and won't let me read my textbooks to him anymore, and now my husband has gone back to school to get his degree. I have changed jobs and am now working as a Regional Director of Customer Success for Imagine Learning, a wonderful organization that provides educational software for schools. I again get the opportunity to manage adult educators, and I'm so grateful to have been able to develop as an adult educator and leader through this program. The learning was enjoyable and beautifully designed, and it left me with the skills I need to continue in my ongoing quest to grow in my field and as a person. I will forever be grateful for my time here at CSU. Thank you.